Mara Sov, a name known for cold calculative decisions. The Queen of the Reef, ruler of the Soul Awoken, and former master of the House of Wolves. Born a human in the late Golden Age, yet is now currently alive and well long after the collapse centuries ago. But how is this possible? How can a human live through not only the late periods of the Golden Age, but even past the collapse and into current periods, far longer than your typical human lifespan? How does a group of humans go beyond the causality of existence, becoming paracausal in nature? It all happened sometime before the collapse. A colony ship named Young Li Wei, codenamed Exodus Green, had departed Earth in hopes of finding ways to live without depending on the traveler. Unfortunately for the crew and colonists aboard the Young Li Wei, they were caught in a battle between the traveler and the darkness. And through that confrontation came the formation of a Google Blitz, a black hole created by the concentration of raw energy coming from both sides. That singularity resulted in the creation of a pocket universe within our own universe, to which both crew and colonists alike aboard the Young Li Wei were annihilated. Freed from their physical bodies, surviving as metaphysical consciousness. It was here that Mara Sov, followed by the captain of the Young Li Wei, Alice Lee, awoke, with their consciousness regaining awareness, shaping themselves within this new reality as Awoken. Though they were in a pocket universe within the Soul System, time moves differently in the Distributary. Where centuries had passed on Earth, it would be equivalent to several millennia for the Distributary, with a surviving populace numbering in 30,111 women, 10,295 men, and 485 otherwise. A council was called to discuss the terms of their new existence, and from that council bore 8 verdicts with the addition of a 9th. The first is that they are awoken and that their people are immortal. The second was that their world is tributary of another, thus to be called Distributary due to its nature of branching from its mother and not returning. Third, all forms of reproduction are allowed, with the consideration of the population as each new child would be immortal. The fourth verdict dictates that those wise in the ways of good technology be heralded and heeded, encouraging the research and development of good technology. Fifth, women should hold care and protection of the men and the others. Sixth, the purpose of the Awoken would be dedicated to the cosmos. Seventh, the Awoken were born from the covenant of both light and darkness. However, the covenant has been fulfilled and thus no further debt would be called. Eighth, the Awoken were whole and that their existence was balanced as is. And finally, that there are to be no votes. Instead, Alice Lee, now renamed to Alice Lee, is to be recognized as Queen, with her first pronunciation being that there were to be no secrets among the Awoken, noting the quiet council revolving around Mara Sov. Through time, philosophical divides began to appear, giving rise to 2 major movements, the Echolist and the Sanguine. While the Echolist believed that they owe a debt to the cosmos, the Sanguine believed their immortality to be a gift and that they owed nothing. This divide peaked during the Theodicy War, instigated by an Echolist preacher, Diacerm, who accused Queen Alice Lee of deicide, the killing of a god, or to be more specific, killing their opportunity at godhood by creating the Awoken as mortals. The conflict grew over the years, which led to not just Queen Lee's abdication due to the heavy losses of Awoken life, but also the conversion of her successor to the Echolist ways, garnering massive support for the Awoken space exploration program. A scholarly order known as the Gensim Scribe were able to rise to power, conspiring with Shur Ado, a paladin of the Queen, to assassinate Mara Sov for the alleged murder of Diacerm. Shur Ado lost a duel to Mara Sov's brother, Aldrin Sov, and became one of Mara's supporters. This failed attempt also gave Mara grounds to subjugate the Gansum Scribe Order and garner more support for her space program, which eventually led to her exodus along with tens of thousands of Acalist Awoken, leaving the Distributary behind. The Awoken flotilla then arrived at the reef during the early City Age, centuries after their departure. The reef being a debris field within the asteroid belt in the Sol system, containing countless dead Golden Age ships. It was here that Marasov established a matriarchal society completely independent from any other. And it was here that about a third of the Awoken expedition members voted to join the last city, thus going into self-imposed exile, being labeled from then on as Earthborn Awoken, separate from Reef-born Awoken. Their establishment of the reef did not come without cost, as a fallen party had traced the Awoken ships headed towards Earth and tracked its sources back to the Reef Awoken. Launching an assault against the Awoken, it was promptly repelled by a small force led by Mara herself along with her brother, Aldrin, and Shor Ado. Though they rallied as many as they could, a vast majority of the Awoken were young to their mortality, and being afraid of death, fled in fear. After the attack, Mara made it clear that if the reef were to be their home, that they would need to establish a solid foundation, complete with a guarantee of protection for her people, establishing a network of both paladins to oversee her military and Corsair starfarers to scour the asteroid belts. For her brother, she charged him with the most important task of all, to go forth and find a power unknown to all others of this world, one that would become the cornerstone of her city where the Awoken shall dream and flourish. In time, Aldrin returned with a creature not larger than his hand, saying, "Behold, sister, the lie that makes itself true. This is an Ahamkara." Their next encounter with the Fallen would happen when Krask, the Kell of Kings, and the House of Kings made a call, mustering the full might of not just the House of Devils from Earth, but also the House of Winter from Venus, extending his invitation to the House of Wolves beyond the asteroid belt. Virixus, the Kell of Wolves, answered the call with the full might of the House of Wolves, numbering between the hundreds of thousands to millions. Marasov began her confrontation with the wolves with a bang, a literal bang, unleashing her harbingers, weapons of mass destruction that not only disabled the fallen ships and servitors, but was followed up with a blast with such destructive force that it destroyed not just half the House of Wolves and Ceres, but also killed Virixus, the Kell of Wolves. This led to infighting between three new claimants to the Kellship: Erxus, Wolf Baroness, Perixus the Howling, and Scolus the Rabid. The civil war, though, did not last very long, with Erxus being picked off first by one of Scolus's nobles, though with a heavy cost, and Perixus being killed during a misled retaliatory attack that was orchestrated by Scolus. This resulted in Scolus being the sole claimant, and with no one else to contest, he reunited the wolves. The conflict between the Awoken and the reunified House of Wolves culminated in the siege of Pallas, where the gathered wolf fleet met with the reinforced Awoken atop 2 Pallas. Using constructed illusions of the Harbinger, the Awoken fleet managed to break the ranks of the wolves, allowing for the Awoken paladins to chase them down. The war finally ended when Varix of the House of Judgment betrayed the wolves and warned the Awoken of an upcoming attack on the fortress of Sibyl. And when Scolus arrived at what he thought was an off-guard fortress, he was instead met with all 4 Armada paladins waiting with a much bigger fleet. Surrounded on all sides, Scolus and his army were defeated in a decisive victory, captured and locked away in the Prison of Elders. The rest of the House of Wolves were given the opportunity to join the Awoken, with some even becoming part of the Royal Awoken Guard. For their involvement in the Reef Wars, Scolus himself was gifted to the Awoken allies who were called the Nine. However, this alliance was put into question when the Nine released Scolus whose followers then incited the Wolf Rebellion upon hearing of his escape. Though many of the rebels were put down, many nobles escaped, and in a response, Marisov was forced to call upon the Guardians in order to quell the rebellion.